Hey everybody, happy Saturday. Rest of my family is sleeping in this morning. I am enjoying some oatmeal for breakfast, and just thought I'd hop on and see how everybody's doing. So let me know if you got any questions, comments, concerns, cheese days, cheese mays, anything like that. I don't think I've ever gone live in the morning before, so this will be a new experience for me. I don't even know if anybody's going to show up, but feel free to come say hi, though. All right. Hello, Anson, Moonshoes, Beth, Nate. Welcome. Hi, everybody. Yeah, let me know if you've got what questions you have. Hope everybody's whatever day and time it is, wherever you are. Hope you're having a good evening, morning, day. Yep, it's right about 9 in the morning on a Saturday for me. It's just a lazy Saturday for me, and well, I have things I need to get done, but family's sleeping in this morning, so I'm just relaxing. James asks if I was at Dragon Con. Yes, I was. I took my whole family to Dragon Con, had a great time. Was surprised by how big Dragon Con was. And I'm already working with some folks to be on a handful of panels for the Skepta track next year. So I will plan on being back there. Do you see Paul as misrepresenting the OT scriptures? I see Paul as representing them in ways different from the ways their original authors and audiences understood them, but misrepresenting everybody who's reading a text outside of its target audience is going to be understanding it through their own lenses. So I would say differently representing, but misrepresenting suggests that there's an inherently right and wrong way to represent the text. And while I think sometimes I will lean rhetorically onto that that characterization, Paul is a member of the Jewish community that was many of them were understanding the scriptures in broadly similar ways. So I don't think Paul is doing anything wrong. When are you responding to Neil at Gnostic Informant? I'm not. I haven't seen any of Neil's content since I blocked him a while ago. So he's free to make content at his leisure, and I will not be watching it. Am I eating cookie dough? No. My standard breakfast is oatmeal with some slivered almonds, some blueberries, and some chocolate chips. So that it kind of looks like cookie dough from a distance. Hi from Puerto Rico. Espero que estén bien ahí. No, estemos porque yo estoy aquí, no estoy en Puerto Rico. Hi from Bosnia. Hi. My brother had no, it wasn't Bosnia. My brother was has been in several bands. And he was in a band called Housefly Army a while ago. And they made a CD, and then they kind of gave it out to a bunch of people, including some members of the armed forces that ended up in one of those countries. I don't think it was Bosnia. It was a neighbor to Bosnia, I believe. But somehow it's began being played on the radio in that country, and they were actually number one on the local charts. So they made T-shirts that said "Housefly Army #1 in," and I forget the name of the country, but that was pretty funny. Babbitt, Minnesota. I bet it's a chilly morning there. It is. What is it? It's 69 degrees right now at 9 a.m. here in Harriman, Utah. How confident are scholars about what Jesus actually said? Not. When we addressed this on the Data Over Dogma podcast interview I did with Helen Bond from Biblical Time Machine, where I mentioned, or I asked, are there still scholars who think that we can be confident that anything that's actually in the Gospels was word for word what Jesus said? And the answer is no. At best, we just have some gist ideas about what Jesus said. Hang on just a moment. I'm going to respond to a message real quick. Thank you for so many insights into Scripture. This comes from a great gay Christian. Well, thank you so much for the very kind words. I am always happy to hear that it's meaningful, particularly for folks in marginalized communities. That means a lot. What's the acceptance of supplementary hypothesis in academia? I think it's growing. I don't think it's taken over by any stretch of the imagination, but it's certainly one of the main theories. Which Bible software do you own / use which package? I have Accordance and Logos. For both of them, I have done work for each of them. For Logos, I wrote several articles for their Lexham Bible Dictionary, and so they gave me quite a lot of stuff, and I've purchased additional things. For Accordance, I did syntactical tagging for a number of Dead Sea Scroll manuscripts for them. So again, I got a lot of stuff, and then I've purchased a lot more stuff since then. So I don't even remember what packages they are, but I have everything I want. And if I am made aware of something I need, I will get it. But I think that Accordance is better for original language research. The search function is more robust. I think the UI is more intuitive. Since you spend a lot of time in England, is there a football team you support there? Actually, no. I have stronger feelings about Uruguay's football teams than I do about England's football teams. And soy mancha, just to be clear. So no, I don't have strong feelings about football teams in England. I've never been to a football match in England. I've been to a football match in Uruguay, but not in England. All right, hang on a second. I have a guest I'm going to invite in here. Unfortunately, I'm not sure exactly how to do that. Okay. Oh, there we go. That ought to do it. Chad asks, hello, Dan. The two stories where Abraham and Isaac both lie to kings about their wives, are these likely based on one original story? Yes. It's likely the same story, just being told two different times. Ooh, a husk. So yeah, that's definitely a doublet, a couplet that that indicates somebody's taking the same story and recycling it. In Genesis, what are some examples of Hebrew linguistic differences that support the documentary hypothesis? Judea versus Northern Kingdom. Well, the documentary hypothesis is a theory of sources, and so the language mainly has to do with couplets, doublets. So the fact that you can take apart the story of Joseph being sold into Egypt into two distinct, freestanding stories with their own beginnings, middles, and ends is one indication, a good indication that there are at least two different sources going on there, and then we have more sources in other stories. But the flood, there are a couple of different sources. The creation, there are a couple of different sources. We just talked about the story of Abraham and Isaac both lying to kings about their sister, or their wives being their sisters. So there are clearly multiple sources going on here. And now I will bring our special guest to the stage.
Hi.
Phone's on.
Sorry.
Sorry, I just realized I needed headphones on if I'm listening to somebody else. All right, welcome.
Thanks for having me up,
Jess. It's been a while since we've been able to chat.
Yeah, I've been just
very busy.
Deep in schoolwork. Yeah, as you know, all good things, but not a lot of time for anything else. How have you been?
Deep in all kinds of other things. My own work. I've got to finish. I am getting my trade book through production right now. I've got another book, an edited volume I'm working on for Equinox's Religion in 5 Minutes series. And then I've got a host of other things. And then we decided this year we were going to do a lot of conventions.
Okay.
So took the family to San Diego for Comic-Con. Just got back from Atlanta from Dragon Con. In 3 weeks, we're doing FanX, which is Salt Lake City's Comic-Con.
Wow.
And then I'm taking my daughter to an anime convention here in Salt Lake called ToshoCon. So
all the cons, holy moly!
It's been a trip.
I bet. I'm actually sitting in the library right now. That's why I was like, let me jump into a side room. I live here now, so it's fine.
Yeah, I know how that works.
Yeah, it's nice because Chicago in the summer is like very hot and humid, at least for me, because I come from California, and the library is always the Arctic North. So I walk over here in like shorts, a tank top, flip-flops, and then I have to bring a sweater, sweats, and socks with me so that I can bundle up in the library. Anyway.
Well, in a few months, half of Chicago will just be covered in ice that has been blown in off the lake, and so
I hope so. The last winter was so like
was it mild?
So boring. It was very mild.
Last time I was in Chicago, it was like cars wouldn't park on the lake side of the road because they would just get covered in ice. But that was many years ago.
Yeah, no, it was a pretty mild winter by all accounts. I was kind of looking forward to because I don't really have seasons for California, so
yeah,
I was excited, and then nothing really, but that's okay.
Gonna answer a super chat question really quick from Zaire. Thank you so much. Hey Dan, did you take part in any D&D TTRPG stuff at the con? I walked around, I looked, I talked to some people about perhaps joining a game, but we couldn't get our schedules to align. So I was in the gaming building, which was incredible. Like I had to bring my girls back the next day. They were painting miniature dragon figurines, and there was a free arcade and all that kind of stuff. So that was fun. Also, Pantera as Jesus's father in Kelsis. Yeah, aren't any data that support the historicity of that. That is most likely an urban legend. And then Vishanti, with whom I had dinner at Dragon Con.
Oh, really?
And yes, we talked cosplay and comics and all kinds of cool stuff. So it was great to meet Vishanti in person. And I'm miserable. LA is having a heat wave right now. 108 yesterday, and
yeah, it's a no from me. No, thank you. That's exciting. Yeah, I've actually been working on, and feel free to interrupt me at any time with your super chats, but working on this paper for which I've requested about 500 books from Dan. So thank you for that. Very useful. About Deutero-Isaiah's use of the Exodus narrative as like a charter myth for his re-envisioned nation. So how it's used in their identity formation, or how it's used in identity formation, and then how it's reused in this context. Very interesting, but sometimes feels like I'm just banging my head against a wall repeatedly. But eventually something shakes out.
Yeah. That's we start out research projects with like a single question, and we think there's going to be a linear path to the other side.
Oh, yeah.
And inevitably, once you start reading the secondary texts, you find out, oh, well, there's this thing here and this thing here and this thing here and this thing here. Ooh, and I'm interested in this thing here. We're going to chase that. And so it ends up becoming this tangled web of
Yeah. Poor
of
Dr. Stacker. The amount of time I've been in his office, just like, well, I was thinking about this, also thinking about this. What do you think about this? And like I sent him what I thought was going to be my outline for this paper, and bless his heart, he emailed me back and said, these are good ideas and this is good organization, but this is the outline for a book. So I need you to take the first point on your first of 6 pages and you can write 20 pages about that. And I was like, well,
yeah.
okay. I mean, which is good. It's good. And like, I get what he's saying, but it's like, dang, narrowing it down is the hardest part for sure.
And that does not get easier. Once you're working on a thesis, once you're working on a dissertation,
yeah,
you struggle with the same kind of stuff. And N.T. Wright told me one time, I was working on my master's thesis at Trinity Western University. And he was like, look, a thesis is just 4 papers. Get it done. A dissertation is just 2 theses. Get it done.
yeah.
And that's a mantra you have to kind of train yourself to take seriously.
Yeah.
That don't let, I forget what the saying is, but don't let I'm going to alter it a little bit. Don't let perfect be the enemy of completed.
Yeah.
So,
I have to remind myself constantly to like get out of analysis paralysis, because I, as you know, will go down like all of the rabbit holes because I find them all very interesting. But like Stafford keeps saying, like, you're writing the 20-page paper. You're not going to be able to tell everybody everything about every point. You're making an argument. Don't worry about, like, at some point, yeah, you're going to need to you're going to need to note that, like, contra so-and-so or this so-and-so. But like right now, you just need to make your argument.
Yep.
Okay,
just
sorry.
Okay, I've got a couple of super chats to bring up. Thank you, Jason, for the super chat. Jen, I need info. Well, I'll see what I can do. Can you give a summary of how the Sabbath day in the OT transition to Sunday? Do you have any book recommendations on the topic? I don't know if there have been many scholarly monographs on the transition of the Lord's Day, Kyriaki, Imera Kyriaki, to Sunday, but I think the basic idea is that there came a point among followers of Jesus that the day of Jesus's resurrection became the main day to celebrate, and that's when they held their meetings and things like that, and that kind of slowly morphed into, okay, this is our version of the Sabbath, and the resurrection was more central to the identity of followers of Jesus than was the creation, which was more important to the identity of Jewish folks. But yeah, in terms of the players in that and exactly when it happened and exactly how, I don't think we have enough data to know for sure. Any thoughts on that, Jessica?
No, I don't know that I've read anything about like the when or why of the transition. I know I've read some stuff from Stacker about sort of different variations, I believe, and like the transition of like meaning in the Old Testament for the Sabbath, but like not on the actual like day of the week transition, I don't think.
No.
Especially not as it would relate to New Testament, because I don't do any New Testament stuff right now. No. Jesus, don't know him.
Yeah. All right, lobotomized buffoon. Thank you for the question. Hello. What are some good websites to look for academic biblical related questions other than r/academic biblical? Most results I get are theological. For like publicly accessible places, Bible Odyssey is something that the Society of Biblical Literature created. So there are a lot of articles from scholars, including one that I wrote, which then ended up in their SBL study Bible. So there's a lot of good stuff in there that's quite accessible by scholars. It's not without its issues, and there are some things that are more theological in orientation. But that would be one place to start. Google Scholar is probably one of your best places to start if you're actually looking for published peer-reviewed scholarship.
Yeah.
But that is not going to weed out theological publications because they're closely interrelated in a lot of ways.
If you don't have access to like a database, like through a college, which most people don't, there's a AI like chatbot called Perplexity AI, and it's for academics. And so sometimes if I'm looking for something, I'll just or not Google it. I'll stick the question in there because not so much that like they're going to give me the answer that I can then take, but they cite their sources. So it's a quick way to see at least like 5 or 6 links. Some of them are going to be in a database, but not all of them are. And then even then, if you see something you really want to read in a database, like I know Dan often shares, and I'm happy to share whatever I have access to. But yeah, that might be another option as well.
Very cool. Yeah, I see a lot more people using AI in videos that I'm responding to.
Yeah, I mean, I like AI for certain reasons, but like not like AI can't do the work for you. Like in actuality, it can help like guide you to find things like in a quicker way, but it just can't do the research for you, unfortunately.
Yeah. And that's one of the criticisms I have of people who use Wikipedia. Like scholars use Wikipedia. If you need a brief introduction to something and you need to be pointed in the direction of who's talking about this in the scholarship, Wikipedia is great. But if you look at Wikipedia and then repeat what is said there as fact, that's when you're going to run into trouble because all it's facilitating further research really. And so you've got to track down the references and you've got to go see what they're saying.
Totally.
So yeah, AI strikes me as much the same. It's a starting point, not
yeah. It's a nice tool, but it just can't. Yeah, it's a nice tool.
I've got I am pushing out real quick on YouTube the video I just posted this morning on Laminin. Have you heard this? Have you heard the Laminin argument that Laminin is proof that God is real?
Wait, what the hell? Sorry, excuse me. What is Laminin?
It's a type of protein that if you look it up in like textbooks and things, if they have a drawing of it, it will look like a cross. And so people are like, it's cross.
It's amazing to me that people think that like if there is this like infinite God, that he's like that uninspired, that he's just making like the DNA crosses.
Yeah. Like, I'm going to make this one a cross.
Yeah, like how old do you think God is? Like, is he using safety scissors still? What's going on here?
Okay, I have a couple questions from my my Discord server. Hayden Tank says, and this is a while ago, I lost track of this again, which is my wont. Good morning. Do you think they smoked some of that sticky loud off the Tanakh cult stand? So that's a reference to this. Did you see this, Jessica?
I think I did, but I don't. It was something about like incense.
Yeah, so this is there would have been either a bowl or they would have put the incense directly on this, and maybe they had a fire under here. I happen to think this was also functioning as a shrine model, so there would have been a divine image, a little Asherah figurine poking out here, because this is Asherah everywhere else. And so the question is, were they smoking some of that sticky loud? Possibly, because at the 2 incense altars at Arad, they tested the burnt residue that was on top of the incense altars, and one of them had 3 different kinds of cannabis in the stuff. And so obviously they were getting high when they were worshiping. That was a part of their worship. And so it's absolutely plausible that whoever was using this in the 10th century BCE was including cannabis in there.
Where did you get that?
A supporter sent it to me.
How cool. Very cool.
And then James McGrath, you know James McGrath? He reached out. He was like, "Hey man, I would love to print one of those out. I got a 3D guy here. If the person who made that would be willing to send me the files."
Yeah.
And I asked him, and he was like, "Here's a Dropbox link. go wild, do whatever you want with it. So so I've posted it at least on my Discord channel. So
that's amazing. That's so cool.
Hey Dan, I have a question. Why so early? It's early. My family's still sleeping in. I've got 2 daughters getting over COVID right now, and so we're just taking it easy today. And I was like, I got nothing else to do right now. I got a lot of yard work, and I got to tear out the floor of my half bath here because I'm putting down new tile. But I'm going to do that later. So I thought I would just go live. All right, we've got some more super chats in here. Just make sure I'm caught up. Okay. Ice cream headache. Thank you so much for the question. Did historical Israel actually free all slaves every 50 years / Jubilee? Always wondered about that. No. That
Nobody did.
Yeah, that didn't happen.
Yeah.
That's a literary invention. Somebody was like, oh yeah, what about every 49 years we do this? That sounds good. Put it in there. But yeah, this was in a period when these texts were not authoritative. They weren't being enforced, and so
it's also like, and you can probably speak more to this than I can, but it seems to borrow a lot from the Mesopotamian, like Anduraru edicts, where they were like, when there was a new king, basically they'd be like, yes, free all the slaves. But like in actuality, what happened was they freed like a couple of people that were like probably wealthy and had to fall into slavery for reasons such as like financial hardship. So it wasn't like they were really freeing all of the slaves. They were just, it was kind of royal propaganda and a little bit of nepotism.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of people don't realize how closely related a lot of the biblical legislation is to what was going on in Mesopotamia. David Wright wrote a wonderful book called Inventing God's Law, which is all about how the covenant code is just ripping off Hammurabi's laws, in many cases in order. And a big part of that is, your law is basically, I'm the best. Look at what I did. Here are all my laws. Put it on display. And then we also have a lot of court cases and lawsuits and judgments and things like that. And no one never once mentions the law codes. They never actually governed how the jurisprudence on the ground. It was all propaganda. Yeah. It's no different from a courthouse in the United States today having a copy of the 10 Commandments out front. Those 10 Commandments mean absolutely nothing, but that is functioning as an icon, as an identity marker. That's why it's there.
Yeah, nice little virtue signal.
Jeremiah, the last 3 Chicago winters have been unusually mild. I've used the snowblower maybe 3 times across those winters. All right, well, that's good to hear that that Chicago is not being blasted as much as they used to be. Bora HCN, thank you so much for the question. Hey, Dan, do you think Adonai grants to Moses the same authority given to Jesus when he says, I have made you Elohim to Pharaoh, since you said El/Elohim is about having sovereignty over something? I talk about that in my book, that certainly Moses is represented as, in some sense, divine. Now, I think divine is a spectrum and not a dichotomy. So it's not like anybody who's divine has the exact same level of power. It's not even linear that way. But certainly Moses is represented in a few different ways, not just with Exodus 7:1, I've made you a god to Pharaoh, but also in Moses coming down from the mountain, and he's got the shiny face, which is also another symbol similar to the Malamu in Mesopotamia of deity. And so yes, Moses is represented as divine. The ideas about how one becomes divine and what that means are very, very different by the 1st century CE from when these texts were originally being composed. Anything to add there?
No, I don't think so, but I did notice a couple of things in the chat. I think there might be something going on with your microphone.
With my microphone?
I think so. Hi, Tux TV. Nice to see you as well. They said it sounds like you're from a distance. You sound fine to me, but I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. And I'm not sure how, like,
Okay,
I'm
I've
not
got
sure
the
what.
gain all the way up. Sometimes
Okay.
when I record my podcast, which I recorded yesterday, I have to turn the gain down just a tiny little bit because I do something with the waveform. It gets too high and the
Okay.
editor yells at me. So
Well, everybody, many other people are saying that it sounds fine to them,
hmm.
so I'm not. Yeah. Oh, anyway, I just wanted to check
All
in,
right.
but
Well, thank you
I can.
for keeping track of that one,
Sorry.
because I have been unable. Nathan Patterson, thank you so much. Me again. I simplified my question. How are monism and non-duality different? Thanks. That's a philosophical question that I think could not answer in an incredibly intelligent way. I think monism and non-duality are describing two different things that might not have been described by those terms by the people who are engaging in them. Monism, I think, is probably describing a much older ideology, something that originates earlier than non-duality. But yeah, in terms of philosophy, I wouldn't be able to adequately distinguish those two. Jessica, any thoughts there?
No, I'm truly not a philosophy person at all.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I've engaged each of those concepts in different ways, but not in a way that required me to actually gain adequate purchase to be able to delineate the two from each other. So I
Yeah.
apologize for being not equipped, but I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm writing down in my little book that Brill was so kind to send me
Hey, bro.
to research this. So next time I will not be caught with my pants down. All right. Thank you, Nathan. I apologize for not being able to give you a better answer. Zypher, thank you for the question. Hebrews 1:8 is used to say the Father is calling Jesus God. Is this accurate? But to the Son, he says, your throne, O God, is forever and ever. So this is a quotation of Psalm 45. And in Psalm 45, it is explicitly directed to the king. So the Davidic king is being referred to as God in the vocative. And you even have the reference to God, your God. So it's referring to the God and then referring to the God's own God. So it is calling Jesus God in the same sense that Psalm 45 is calling the king God. They're not really God. They're one of God's agents, but they are divine, can be considered divine, can be referred to as a God. So it's not. It's what it's certainly not is Trinitarianism. And that's New Testament, so that's outside of Jessica's scope of Jessica's care or
It doesn't
concern.
I don't care. It's I just I had to pick for now. So
Yeah.
it's and I mean I know I know enough I say about the New Testament, but not from necessarily a super academic point, just from my own upbringing. But I try not to speak too authoritatively on that or anything really, but especially on that because I'm not studying it right now.
Yeah. Silver says, I'm currently writing an exceptionally boring article on notice of claim requirements for New York State employees and discrimination and harassment action. So a live stream is wonderful company. Well, I'm glad to hear that. I hope we don't distract you too much. Vishanti asked, what ideas do you have for next year's DragonCon SkepTrack panels? So I was invited to pitch a few ideas for SkepTrack panels. I think one of them is going to be, at least one of them is just going to be data over dogma about the Bible. Because my trade book, The Bible Says So, which will be released on April 15th, is going to be out, will have been out for a few months by the time of DragonCon. So I'd love to talk about that, about what the Bible actually says about certain things. And then I think I'll probably also pitch a panel on the cognitive science of religion, because I don't think enough people know that there's a whole field of study on how the mind and structures within the mind facilitate and in some ways are responsible for originating concepts of deity, features of ritual and stuff like that. I think a lot of people would be interested in that. So those are the two main ones. And then I might have a couple of lectures that I could do related to each of those topics.
This is unrelated, but I noticed when you picked up your book in the background, are your books on sale anywhere that isn't like Eyes in Bronze or something. I know you have the digital copy, but
Right.
Yeah.
So this is an SBL press publication.
Okay.
So there's a PDF. It's part of their open access
No, I want the
series. So
book.
you can get it on Amazon. I
Good,
mean,
great. That's all
the
I needed
price
to
is
know.
the same, and I think they're just going to pass on the order to SBL Press.
Okay, well, I mean, I'll
So-
look at either place. I just think I like physical copies of books, and I look at a screen so much that sometimes, like, if I can get a book that I know I'm going to look at with some regularity, I just get the book.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm the same way. And this reminds me, on my link tree that I have in the profile on all my channels, I have links to every last thing I've ever published. So at the moment, it will not be true anymore come April because my trade book will be out. But at the moment, every academic thing I've ever published is freely available online. I made a point about publishing my dissertation open access. Okay, so I've got to catch up on my comments. Okay. What is Dan's breakfast of champions this morning? I had oatmeal with some sliced almonds, some blueberries, and chocolate chips. Dan, are there any particular speakers, subjects that you are interested in for Bart Ehrman's upcoming conference on Paul? I have not looked at the schedule. I'm aware of it, but I will look at the schedule. I'm sure there will be some folks of interest, particularly if, yeah, I'll have to look at it. It looks like Vishanti for the Discord crowd posted a picture of me with Forrest. Bonus for the Discord crowd, proof that Dan and Forrest finally met in person, and Dan got immediately enabled into doing panels for next year. So there's a picture of me with Forrest on there. Which con was this? It was Dragon Con. Was Matthew's habit of finding prophecies in non-prophetic OT texts more to do with tradition of interpretation or use of the Septuagint? I think both. I think the use of the Septuagint facilitated rereading a lot of traditions as prophetically. Dragon Con in Atlanta. BBBB. Okay, that's I'm caught up on Discord for now. Now to get caught up on the the other things. Okay. Emster 715. I apologize. I don't know how you like that pronounced, but thank you so much for the question. Any
Hamster.
Opinions? Emster? Okay.
I said hamster, but
hamster.
Sorry.
Any opinions on or resource recommendations for why names in the New Testament are so anglicized? Is it a language translation thing? It's because the New Testament comes to us from Greek through Latin. So it's going to be anglicized. Old Testament names are generally being translated directly from the Hebrew or the Aramaic. And so there are fewer transliterational steps for things to take. But in the New Testament, it's coming to us through Greek. And so New Testament names that are coming from the Old Testament are being transliterated from Hebrew into Greek, then into Latin, then into English. Whereas, and that's the tradition. Like, we don't translate from Latin for the New Testament, but traditionally the pronunciation of these names has been handed down to us through the Latin. So that's a big part of it. Whereas Old Testament, they're still anglicized to some degree, and some of those are coming to us through Greek as well. Like Solomon, that's not a direct transliteration from Hebrew. That's coming through the Greek because it's just Shlomo in Hebrew, which is a great name.
Actually, it's a good name.
Austin, thank you so much for the question. Love your work. Thank you. I appreciate the kind words. I'm a Latin major at Brown. Awesome. I was at Brown several months ago in May. Wonderful campus. Had a great time. 2 questions. When was the Decalogue composed? It was probably composed over the period of a few centuries, incorporating older ideas, revising some of them, putting in newer ideas. But things like the Sabbath, I think that's probably an exilic creation. So I don't think we get the final number and order and everything until exilic period at the very earliest. But some of the law legislation probably is pre-exilic. Any strong thoughts on that, Jessica?
I think that I've done a lot of reading recently about the what is it? The Bildervat. And that alone, which is just the like don't worship other gods or images, has so much redaction and editing and like that the Decalogue, I don't know, the whole thing,
Yeah,
I don't know.
the whole thing, yeah, all 10 of them, come on.
All
That's almost a whole
like,
chapter. Yeah, just
like,
one verse is hard enough to drill to the bottom.
Yeah.
So.
It's, yes, I mean, so I think, yeah, I agree with you. I just think that like the further I get into studying the Old Testament, the more I realize that like nothing is as it seems. Nothing is, I mean, not in like like they mean something they're, you know, not saying, but just that like there's so much to each part of these ancient texts and where they've come from that like most of them come from a bunch of different times.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Every generation adds a layer. We're looking through all these different kaleidoscopic kind of lenses through this. And so trying to pick them apart and weed out everything that's post-composition is impossible in most cases. Is Sermon on the Mount still useful to us today? I personally think that it is very useful, but that's more of a theological question. I think a lot of folks find utility and value in it, and even folks like Jordan Peterson, who want to misread it to mean the exact opposite of what it was intended to say, are finding utility in the Sermon on the Mount. So whether I think all of that utility is good, that's a different question. But yeah, I think it can absolutely be useful to folks. Shamgar's Oxcode on Discord says, "Hey, Dan and Jess, are there any positions of scholarly consensus that either of you disagree with or hold that would be considered a fringe opinion?"
I mean, I don't think, not that I can think of off the top of my head, but I will say that my advisor is like a neo-documentarian, and I know that's not like the most popular position on that right now. And it's not that I just like blindly agree with him, but because I study under him, I tend to hear more of that position. So that might be the closest thing to like it's not really fringe, but the closest thing to a like consensus that I might lean towards.
We're on the 45% side of the 45-55 split. So it's like, that's not really fringe, but
but I don't think like Caesar made up Jesus or something.
Right.
Like that. Like,
oh man. I think I published a paper on Psalm 82 arguing that Psalm 82 is post-exilic. I think that's one thing where a lot of my early Israelite religion friends are like, come on, Dan. So I think I'm probably a little outside the mainstream there. I think my theory on the cognitive origins of this conceptualization of Jesus as a divine image of sorts is a theory that not a lot of people know about, but certainly is not remotely a consensus view. So that's something where I'm trying to chip away at the consensus a little bit. But it's also a multifaceted theory where there are features of it that are more consensus, and then other features of it that are less consensus. So so it's a complex tapestry. It's not.
I think like more than anything, I would have positions that probably are the scholarly consensus, but that like maybe your like everyday person would disagree with, which is fine. But you know, like if you walk around school here and say like Moses never existed, everybody's like, cool. But if you say that, you know, elsewhere, people are like really, really disagree with it. So again, I know that's not a scholarly consensus, but I definitely hold some positions that people think are controversial outside of the scholarly community.
Here's a great question. Was there actually a tension between iconic and aniconic worship in ancient Israel? Do the elaborate descriptions of the tabernacle and temple indicate a more iconic-laden worship?
I'm working on this.
You're working on this right now? What are you?
Well, kind of.
You're reading stuff on this.
Yeah, I'm not like working on it as in like.
Yeah, the 90s and the 2000s were a big time for aniconism.
Yeah, so right now, part of the paper that I'm writing has to do with the idol parodies in Isaiah. And so it does, like, it begs the question, like, why if Israel had always been aniconic and didn't deal with idols, why are they so dead set against them, right? Like, they're constantly railing against them. And, like, usually you don't get prohibitions about things repeatedly if the people that are getting these prohibitions aren't in need of them,
Yeah.
from that
Already
viewpoint.
doing that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
I tend, there's a scholar named Trygve Mettinger who wrote a couple of books on
Yeah, no graven
related
image.
to this. Yeah. And I tend to like his idea that there's kind of a de facto aniconism that's taking place once we get into the Iron Age, where it's part of the zeitgeist that you just don't represent the deity as directly. Some of this has to do with markets and craftspeople and resources that are available. Some of it has to do with just a preference for like representative animals and symbols and things like this. So, for instance, Asherah is represented iconographically a lot less directly once we get into the first millennium BCE. And then this de facto aniconism becomes a de jure aniconism once it gets picked up for propagandistic purposes. But we have a First Temple period temple that was run by the nation of Judah at Arad, and there was a standing stone in the Holy of Holies. So we know they were using those, and we find these divine images, icons, idols, whatever you want to call them. Every time we find cultic spaces in the material record. So yeah, it was definitely going on, and I tend to like the idea of a de facto aniconism becoming de jure when it becomes useful as propaganda and useful for boundary maintenance. And in my book, I argue that a big part of this was the destruction of the temple and the exile, that there became a desire to find a way to create material media that could facilitate God's presence that was not so easily destroyed.
Yeah.
And the text of the law becomes, in my opinion, and according to my argument, the locus of divine presence and divine agency.
Yeah. It's also, I mean, like, and I know this, Jeroboam was obviously not a very popular king, but you even have him with the calves in Bethel and Dan. I made a joke about the cult of Dan to Stackert the other day when I was talking about ewes. I don't know if he appreciated it as much as I did, but that's fine. But yeah, and like obviously we are retrospective, whatever, told that these idols, these calves were bad and evil, and Jeroboam was bad and evil. But in the time that he was doing it, like, it's actually quite popular.
Yeah, it would have been normative. Nobody would have raised an eyebrow at it.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So I mean, and I don't know that we have or I don't think we have a ton of actual material evidence for like representations of Yahweh. But if we're talking about it a little more broadly than just Yahweh, I think there's some good, interesting, at least, evidence for what you're saying.
I mean, come on, we got a nude female in the bottom register. We've got the stylized date palm with the ibexes feeding on either side of it. We've got this equine figure with the sun disk. I mean,
yeah. Well, and it's like, what do you consider iconic, right? Is it just, okay, this is your deity, and so you have an icon representing him, or is it, something like the Ark of the Covenant where he is supposed to live, right? You're not worshiping the Ark technically, but that's where he is. Or you look at like Solomon's temple, and we have this like throne and altar in there, and it's like, yeah, that's not exactly, we're not saying this is Yahweh, but you are saying like when he wants to go talk to Yahweh, that's where he goes. So I guess it's also a bit dependent on how we are thinking about that.
Yeah. I argue Deuteronomy 4, where they've got you heard my voice out of the fire, but you did not see a form. God's up in heaven. That's like the fire is God's intercom system. There goes.
That's funny.
Dinner's ready. Get downstairs.
This is
okay. Homer Simpson, this is God, Free Jones. Okay, we got some more super chat questions. X Chris Vaughn X, thank you so much for the questions. Joseph's coat of many colors, Katana Pasim, related to the virgin clothing in 2 Samuel 13. Should we picture Joseph in a woman's colorful dress? I think most scholars today would say this probably had to do with a long robe with long sleeves, which would have been symbolic of some kind of social status. So this was, Joseph got a special back to school outfit from his dad that nobody else got, and they're all pretty jealous about it. Now, in terms of a woman's colorful dress, I think that has more to do with tradition, the idea that this is about colorful clothing than the language indicates. Okay, DVC, thank you so much for the question. Thoughts about the doctrine RE, perpetual virginity of Mary, specifically regarding the idea that references to the brothers of Jesus weren't a precise translation and referred to extended family. That doesn't work. This is a later. This is a dogma, a doctrine that developed as a response to other dogmas / doctrines that developed as a way to solve problems, basically. So this is the outcome of a lot of deliberation rather than something that is supported by any data or indicated by any data. So yeah, I would suggest that if you took a good hard look at the texts, absolutely nothing anywhere in the Bible or in any of the earliest recoverable traditions suggests the perpetual virginity of Mary. And Gilles, perhaps I'm probably butchering that. I apologize for probably most likely pronouncing that incorrectly. But thank you so much for the question. Hi, Dan. Jess. So this is for both of us, perhaps. Dan, your work on YouTube is so useful and valuable. That means a lot. Thank you so much. Question: how can one fully engage in religious ritualistic traditions, e.g. Eucharist, while critically recognizing their non-supernatural roots? That's a question I can't really answer personally, but I will point out that there are folks that I know who have said they lean into the phenomenological aspects of ritual and things like that in order to enjoy them and enjoy the social bonding that they facilitate and that they probably exist to facilitate, and use them to serve those ends rather than engaging in them because they actually believe there is some divine requirement or that there is something supernatural going on in the performance of the ritual. And a good book on what's going on in ritual is by Harvey Whitehouse, and it's called The Ritual Animal. And I normally have a copy of it over here, but I don't right now. So yeah, The Ritual Animal, that's a wonderful discussion of what's going on with ritual from a cognitive science point of view. Any thoughts there, Jess? Or your rituals mainly have to do with coffee and studying, and so you don't have to worry about that.
I mean, yeah, I think I agree with you, especially the further I get away from being like a religious person myself. I still find value in a lot of different ritual practices for what it does for the community it fosters, and I don't need it to have any supernatural meaning.
Well stated. I think there are an awful lot of people, even those who might not be like more skeptically oriented, who are all in on the supernatural aspect of things,
right,
will consciously engage in ritual because they enjoy the social aspects or other phenomenological aspects of it.
Yeah.
Okay, we've got a question from Nasir. Thank you so much for the super chat. Why is the Nard and Carcombe construction in songs attested in First Enoch of Qumran as Nard Tov? Oh gosh, I have not looked at that feature of it, but if you give me just a second so I can pull the text up, I'll see if I have anything intelligent to say about it. Because I'm going to look up. I need to know what passage we're looking at. I'm going to pull up Nickelsburg and Vanderkam. They might have a discussion there, because I've not looked directly at this in the past. Yeah, this is gonna take a minute, but maybe if you can. Oh, we've got an awful lot of
You've
super
got a lot
chats
of.
there. This always happens. I get way behind because I get talking about something.
Yeah. I'm trying to talk less, but it's not my forte.
Whoop. Nope, don't want that.
I wonder if there's a way that you could. I mean, I don't know. I know everybody probably wants to hear, but like putting a pin in this and checking into it after, maybe.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking I might have to do, because I have to look up the exact passage, and I don't remember where that's featured in the scrolls. All right, hang on just a moment. Okay, I've made a note of this. If someone can tell me where to look in First Enoch while we're moving on, I will be happy to circle back around to this in the live. Otherwise, I'll have to.
I'll keep an eye on the chat as well to see if they.
Thank you. Luke, thank you for the question. What's the most transparent way Christians should do apologetics? I think to acknowledge that. I don't know. I don't think a lot of people are going to want to engage in apologetics transparently, because if everybody recognizes that we're just here to defend our team, that kind of undermines the appearance of academic robustness and validity that is needed for apologetics to do what it's supposed to be doing. However, or what it's ostensibly supposed to be doing. However, I think that really the goal of most apologetics is just to perform academic legitimacy for folks who already believe, who just need to feel justified in believing. And so if someone were transparently doing that, I don't know if it would get the job done nearly as well. But that would be the transparent way of doing it. Say, hey, I'm here to make you feel better about believing this by trying to come up with arguments that simulate academic validity and robustness. And but frequently that's not what it does. If you wanted to do it transparently, but also effectively, perhaps you could maybe pick the battles a little more carefully and find places where you can actually make legitimate academic cases for things. So that would that would have to be more oriented toward the social aspect of things rather than the supernatural historical aspect of things. And I think it looks like Jessica, I heard some feedback or something coming through the headphones, so she might be logging off to log back on, or she might be getting kicked out of the room she's in. Oh, here we go. She's back.
So I don't know, for some reason I got a phone call and I didn't take it, but then I just couldn't hear you anymore. So I was like, okay, well, that's not going to work.
Oh, that's because I heard some kind of buzzing in the.
Oh, that must have been. Yeah, sorry about that.
Phone call. Okay. Oh, no worries. I'm not trying to monopolize your day.
I don't answer my phone. It's okay.
Anton, thank you so much for the question. Thank you for your work. That's very kind of you. I appreciate it. Can you recommend a book on the historicity of the Book of Mormon? There's not really much historicity to talk about. However, I will recommend two interesting books. Give me just a second to pull them out. I can find them. Oh, there we go. So two books that I would recommend for people interested in the historical background of what's going on in the Book of Mormon. One is called Producing Ancient Scripture, Joseph Smith's Translation Projects in the Development of Mormon Christianity, which is a collection of papers that have to do with a variety of different aspects of translation and early Mormonism. And we've got folks like Ann Taves and others who are featured in here. And that's a good volume that is overwhelmingly approaching things from a critical point of view. And then Envisioning Scripture, Joseph Smith's Revelations in their early American context. And this is edited by a friend of mine named Colby Townsend, who does a wonderful job. And again, very critical approach to understanding the historical context for the development of the Book of Mormon. So I think those are a couple of really great books related to that question.
I don't know anything about Mormonism, so
yeah, no need to tag in on that one. We got another question from Watashi Wajodesu. I dropped something, and I've also butchered that as well. But wonderful Thundercats image there. Thank you so much for the question. I love your work. I appreciate that very much. I've heard that there are literary connections between the Samson narrative and Heracles. Also, Shamgar. Can you elaborate on this? Recommended sources. There are, Jessica, you've probably come across this research more recently than I have. But okay, we're dropped out again, maybe getting another phone call. There are some literary, if not allusions, there are some things that suggest drawing from a shared cultural matrix. Hi, welcome back.
just keep thinking.
I don't know that I can elaborate too much on the precise relationships. Do you know anything about the overlaps with Samson and Heracles?
I don't know a ton about Heracles, so I'm not sure that I do, but I wouldn't be surprised that there would be literary connections. I just don't know them.
I know I read about them in graduate school, but it's been a while since I've looked directly at them. But I would say that there's probably quite a bit of scholarship that suggests there is some kind of overlap, some kind of influence going on. So give me just 1 second. Let me see if I happen to pull something up. If I magically have something saved here, that's because I know I've seen research on this.
Yeah,
but it's been a long time.
I mean, it definitely looks like they share the same like thematic points, but I couldn't speak to like if one borrowed from the other or something.
Yeah. Well, here we got an article by Robert Noose from 2018 from the Scandinavian Journal of the Old Testament. And the only thing I'll say right off the bat is this journal sometimes has a reputation for not being as critical. But here's the abstract from his article, Samson and Heracles Revisited. In the past, scholars have suspected that Greek legends about Heracles and other Greek narratives may have influenced the emergence of the Samson narrative. In Judges 13 through 16, usually Philistine mediation of these Heracles legends to the Israelites in the pre-monarchic era was suggested. However, the author suggests that the Heracles legends arose in the 6th century BCE and later, so the biblical author could have encountered Greek stories only in the Persian or Hellenistic eras. The Samson narratives then would be a late redaction into the Deuteronomistic history. The author believes that the large number of similarities indicates not simply familiarity with generic folkloristic motifs, so that would be the shared sociocultural matrix theory, but rather that the author of the Samson narratives was familiar with the Heracles legends. So that would be a directional influence. So that's what Robert Noose argues. And so I imagine that that's probably not going to be too far off from the majority view. But if you look elsewhere, most of the stuff that I'm pulling up about Samson's relationship to Hercules is coming from the mid to the late 20th century. Ye old 1900s.
Back in the day.
Yeah.
Back in the 1900s.
But that would actually make for an interesting video topic. I'm actually going to write that down so I can have something else to, so I can revisit that and make a video and give you some more thoughts on that, because that's something I've not addressed in quite some time. Okay, Nasir, circling back, it sounds like, to First Enoch. Why is a word which later became words for vacancy, void, and yellow in Arabic represented in Qumran but not in the Bible? There are a lot of words in at Qumran that are not in the Bible, and there are forms of words that are also not in the Bible, because Qumran Hebrew is a later type of Hebrew. Qumran Hebrew is the 2nd century BCE to 1st century CE brand of Hebrew that is quite different from the biblical Hebrew that we find. And you can find all kinds of discussions about Qumran Hebrew. You can find grammars, you can find lexicons. In fact, Dictionary of Qumran Aramaic by Cook that's a different type of Aramaic that's found at Qumran. There are going to be a lot of different ways that the Hebrew of Qumran differs, and could even be more closely related to Arabic. A Grammar of Qumran Aramaic by Muraoka, and he's about the best there is. Rensburg wrote in 2010, published, that's just a paper, Qumran Hebrew. So that's going to discuss differences between the Hebrew at Qumran. So it's just a later type of Hebrew, and it wouldn't surprise me at all that it has some overlaps with Arabic. There obviously there's a linguistic relationship there between those languages.
Can I hop in for 1 second? Not on this topic, but
yeah,
you just got a bunch of new people in asking who I am. I'm an apparition. No, my name is Jessica. I go by Heathen Queen on the internet. I haven't been as active, but I found Dan through TikTok a while back. I'm currently a graduate student at the University of Chicago studying the Hebrew Bible and Ancient Near East. So hope that helps.
And that's I suppose I should have introduced you. I guess I'm just assuming that most folks know who you are, but
nah, you don't need to introduce me.
You've been busy recently, so
you can say that.
Graduate school is a busy time. Okay, Zaire, come back again. Thank you so much for the super chat. Favorite chapter in Isaiah and favorite Isaiah misconceptions for both of you. Also, are you on Discord as well? I guess that is a question for Jessica. I am on Discord because I have a Discord channel that is associated with my Patreon.
So am I on his Discord? I mean, I have a Discord. I'm not very active on it. I'm also on Dan's Discord. I'm very active on that, but I have it in my mind to be more active because I've been talking to, Jess, reply to your DMs in all caps. Jacob has been pestering me to be more active on Discord, so I'm going to try to do that. Thanks, Jacob.
And favorite chapter in Isaiah, I have favorite verses. I don't know that I have whole chapters that I would say are my favorite. Isaiah 27:1 is awesome. I love that verse. But I think I did a deep dive on Isaiah chapter 2 a few years ago and really came away from it appreciating that chapter quite a bit. But I don't know that I've got many whole chapters that I appreciate. Favorite chapter of Isaiah for you, Jess?
Before I do that, just note this down really quick. First Enoch was 44403. I was trying to copy it, but I can't. Oh, maybe I can. Hold on. Let me see. Then I can give it to you so you have it. Okay, I just sent it to you in your DMs on Facebook. Sorry. I was trying to copy it. It didn't work, and I wanted to make sure before it went away. So, do you have a favorite chapter? Man, I have a chapter that I'm working on. Right now, I'm working a lot on Isaiah 40, part of Isaiah 41 and part of Isaiah 44, both of which are idol polemics. I like the idol polemics a lot, especially because I'm also super interested in like Mesopotamian ritual. And so there's a lot of interesting overlap and wordplay, and I don't know necessarily borrowing per se, but it's clear that the author is familiar with this ritual or these rituals from Babylon and Nineveh. So, but those right now are very interesting to me. I really enjoy them. favorite misconception. I think my favorite misconception is that somehow the author was, well, first that it was one author, and then two, that author was prophesying all of these things like 150 years in advance. Those are my favorite.
That's a big one. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
Okay, so that's First Enoch 1. Okay, I'm gonna continue to pick away at the Enoch question when I have a moment. All right. Oh man. Jacob Bennett says, "Howdy do, folks." Howdy,
Hi,
Jacob. Thank you so much for the super chat. And Nasir says it's the etymon of our words for cipher and zero. Oh, okay. So vacancy, void, and yellow in Arabic represented in Qumran, but not in the Bible. It's our etymon for the words cipher and zero. Yeah, I think we have a lot of our mathematic terms come to us through Arabic because, well, we have Arabic numerals that we use among English speakers. I'll have to look a little more into that. Arabic cipher. Oh, okay. And this. Okay, so this might have to do with the Enoch question, because in First Enoch 32. By the way, I am seeing a lot of stuff about the Ethiopian Bible. Have you seen the people hawking the Ethiopian Bible, complete English 88 books thing on TikTok?
No, I have not been on TikTok.
Oh, well, lucky you.
Yeah.
But anyway, there are people trying to sell this this Bible that's supposed to be all the Ethiopian Bible. One, it's not the complete Ethiopian Bible. There are still books in the Ethiopian Bible that have not been translated into English. Two, the person who published it has claimed to have translated it, and that's just straight up a lie, because they're just reproducing the King James Version of the Bible. They're reproducing R.H. Charles's translations of the Book of First Enoch and Jubilees and things like that from 100 years ago. So it's just a straight up lie. But the Hermeneia commentary series is my favorite commentary series. And the 2 volumes on First Enoch are wonderful, but they've also taken just the translation of First Enoch itself and published it as this slim volume that literally costs like $17. So if you want a translation of the Book of Enoch, get the Hermeneia translation. Yeah, okay, so we have, we have in First Enoch 32:1. Beyond these mountains, approximately to the north of their east side, I saw other mountains filled with choice nard and separ. And so that's just being transliterated. It may be a corrupt transliteration of something. I'll have to look more into what's going on with that word. But I think that's probably what Nasir is talking about. But yeah, I'll look into that a little bit more. Austin, thank you so much for the question. Where is Adonai's male organ mentioned? Well, if it is mentioned, it's being placed between the lines to some degree. And there are a couple of different places where we could understand it to be referenced. One is in the reference to God's hand. We see this in references to El from the Ugaritic literature. The yad, the hand, is a euphemism for the penis. And so we have a story from Ugarit where El's hand grows as large as the sea, if you can imagine. And then there's also, and this is something that I don't have the book with me, but Francesca Stavrakopoulou's book, God and Anatomy, talks like 3 chapters on God's genitals in that book. But she talks about Isaiah 6, where Isaiah is in the temple and sees God their throne, and the word that is usually translated robe or skirt or something like that, it filled the temple. That is shul, which is a word that refers fundamentally to things hanging down. And so in Exodus, it is used to refer to the hem or the robe that hangs down, but it is also used in Jeremiah and in other places to refer to genitals, the hanger downs. And
Is
so,
this like the lower body? Like, no, that's a different word. Sorry.
yeah, no, not lower body. And it's used to refer to genitals where God's like, I'm going to expose your shul to the world, and you're going to be.
Okay, yeah.
And so she argues that one way of reading this, maybe not necessarily the only way, but one way of reading this is to understand God's genitals to, one, put all the seraphim to shame because they're like, ooh, geez, and they're covering their own loins, and it's also a way to show who's the boss, who's the main character. So there are a few different ways that that's represented, but the main reason that we understand the Bible to be representing God as having genitals is because God is represented as thoroughly anthropomorphic, corporeal, and male presenting, and it would have merited mention if this was a male presenting anthropomorphic corporeal being that did not have genitals. Like they 100% understood this deity to have genitals. And you have reference in Ezekiel 1 where Ezekiel is describing this thing. And Ezekiel is hedging. You're using language that's intended to make it sound like you're kind of seeing it, but you're also kind of not seeing it because you want to describe God, but at the same time, God is indescribable. So that's a tough needle to thread. So he does this thing where it's like, oh, from the loins up, it was like shiny and crystalline, and then from the loins down, God was fiery and this, that, and the other. And but the loins are kind of the focal point, the point of reference for Ezekiel. So, yeah, the anthropomorphism of God in the Hebrew Bible is a huge story. You've got books by Christoph Markschies, by Benjamin Sommer, by Wagner. I forget Wagner's first name. By Brittany Wilson wrote one on Luke Acts, anthropomorphism in the New Testament. So it's all over the place. And then, yeah, what is your thank you for the question, Constellation Pegasus. What's your explanation for God wanting to kill Moses? Exodus 4. My explanation is that the author wanted to provide some kind of impetus, some kind of motivation for people to think that circumcision is important to God, and so told the story where God wants to kill Moses. And they're probably drawing from some kind of pre-existing tradition about a deity, whether malevolent or benign, that comes to a person and threatens to kill them.
It's such a strange story.
It is such a strange story, but I made a video when I was in Atlanta for Dragon Con, where I talked about what's going on with circumcision in the Bible, and I suggested that it probably became an identity marker that was considered important as there was more and more emphasis put on distinguishing ourselves from the people around us.
Yeah.
Doug, thank you so much for the question. When did Adonai go from being one of the gods to being the one God? Big question here. This is, I think, the one God in the sense of monotheism, a philosophical monotheism. I don't think that happens during the Bible at all. I think that is post-biblical. And I think it really gets fleshed out between the medieval period and the Enlightenment. In terms of the main God, I think that happens. Josiah, I think, is the one who makes the biggest kind of pivot towards holding up Adonai as the main one, and we're not even going to worship the other ones. And then I think that gets further rationalized as we get into and then out of the exile, and the other gods are kind of in my representation, my understanding, are demoted to largely angelic status. They're kind of shoved down, and so the pantheon gets kind of narrowed, but also lengthened, so that God is so much further above all the other gods.
Yeah, there's a lot of post-biblical discourse around monotheism, sort of in Isaiah, especially because they're doing all of the idol polemics. Sorry, this is on the brain because I'm reading about it right now. But what I found really interesting is the way in which the idol polemics seem to be engaging on the like iconic political spectrum of ancient West Asia, where they are like they understand and engage in the same sort of like broad practice, and a lot of the language in the idol polemics is about sort of like making the other gods dead instead of alive, which is also like really related to their like warfare rhetoric. But I think the idol polemics that you'll read in the Bible are much more like social identity, like boundaries and creations, than they are actual like manifestos of monotheism.
Yeah, and that's the trade book that I have coming out. The Bible Says So, April 15th. Wherever you get your fine and also other kinds of books. I have a chapter on what is it? It's not monotheism technically. The chapter, I'm responding to the claim that the Bible says there's only one God. But one of the things I begin with a little anecdote about how the first time I saw my dad cry was when the Broncos won the Super Bowl in 1998. But I talked about how for us growing up, like there were the Broncos and there was no one else. And the Raiders weren't even a real football team. Yeah. And so like that's doing the same thing. It's the same kind of rhetoric. It's rhetoric that you use to demean the out group and you use to kind of commiserate with the in group. And it's the exact same thing going on in the anti-idol and the one God rhetoric in Jubilee, Isaiah and elsewhere.
Yeah.
All right, but wonderful question. Thank you. Okay, a woohoo. I hope that is. Initially, I was going for a DuckTales, a woohoo, but then I had that song. Was it Big Black Horse? I don't know. That song got in my head. Which version of the Ten Commandments are on the tablets according to Exodus 34:1 through 28? I think it's the one that includes the kid in mama's milk. According to Exodus 34, yeah. That's the other version of the Ten Commandments, the ritual decalogue, as most scholars refer to it, not what we have in Exodus 20. But if you look in Deuteronomy 4 and 5, there they understand the Ten Commandments to be the version from Exodus 20. But yeah, that's probably the ritual decalogue that they're talking about. Precarious Porcupine, thank you so much for the question. Thoughts on how to worship Asherah nowadays? However you like. I think that I don't know if there's got to be Asherah worship going on somewhere, but whatever it is, it's going to be neo Asherah worship. It's going to be a reconstruction that is based on more contemporary ideas about paganism and things like that. So consult your local neo-pagan for more information on worshiping Asherah.
I've been asking what Jess's studies and specialties are. So I'm just doing a master's program right now. I wouldn't say I have a specialty yet, but I study broadly Hebrew Bible and Assyriology. So last year I did a lot of language. This year I'll do a lot of language. And I also took a lot of, I took several text classes. So one on Ezekiel, one on 2nd Isaiah. Both of those looked a bit different. And then this coming year, I'll be taking more Akkadian and like archaeological surveys of the Near East and all of that stuff. So specialties, I don't know yet, but that's the general gist without taking up too much time.
Yeah, that's what master's degree is. You're still kind of generalizing a little bit as you're kind of moving into specialization.
Yeah. Basically, I do language all the time, every day, every second.
Yeah,
that's it.
one of the main things that you're trying to do is get the language there. A question I've gotten frequently is what good Spanish language scholarship there is out there, and I've always demurred from answering because I honestly don't know. But yesterday I got in the mail the newest issue of Near Eastern Archaeology, and it's a special issue, Spanish Archaeology in the Near East. So you reminded me that that I was reading through these articles yesterday on Spanish archaeology, and so there's some wonderful there's wonderful information about some Spanish language scholars. And one of the first article was by someone named Jordi Vidal, who's in Barcelona. And I just love that you can't see it, but the picture of Jordi is he's wearing an Iron Maiden t-shirt. So I was like, a scholar after my own heart. But he's published a couple of books. La Interpretación del Antiguo Israel looks interesting. And so he's done some work on Ugard as well. So if you want like to get a monthly Near Eastern archaeology thing, or even a biblical archaeology review thing to keep up to date on what's going on, it's not incredibly expensive. So that's something that you can look into. Jesus Tales, thank you so much for the question. Psalms 110 is the most quoted chapter in the New Testament. What is meant by "my Lord said to my Lord"? Is Jesus saying he is not the son of David by quoting this? So Psalm 110 says "Noum Adonai Ladoni." So and by Adonai they have the Tetragrammaton. So it's actually Adonai said to my Lord, and my Lord there is the secular use of Lord, not the divine sense of Lord. So it's really, the confusion is in the fact that we're using the substitution Lord in English translation. Would not have been confusing in Hebrew. Adonai said to my Lord. So it is, and there it's talking to the king. So is Jesus saying he is not the son of David by quoting this? In Greek, you have the same kind of substitution and confusion that you have in English. So you can kind of toy with the interpretation a little bit. But yeah, that's based on a messianic reading of that passage that in Greek has the potential for conflating the two characters. But thank you so much for the question. Nasir, thank you so much for another question. Why do the Peshitta and the Septuagint agree on the mistranslation of the Sipper root in Ezekiel 9:2, a sapphire belt and not a writer's kit? So that's a reference to you have the 6 executioners that are supposed to stand at the ready, and then the person with the writer's kit goes in to put a mark on the forehead of everybody who is abhorred by the violence and the sin of Jerusalem. And then the 6 executioners go in and they're supposed to slaughter everybody who does not have the mark, man, woman, child, whatever, show no mercy. Why do the Peshitta and the Septuagint agree? Because the Peshitta is probably downstream textually from the Septuagint. And the Septuagint probably has let me pull that up real quick and see if I see any immediately evident note about what's going on here. Writing case at his side. Yeah, look at that. And a belt of sapphire upon his waist. I'd have to look into that to see why they interpret it that way. But thank you for further clarifying what we're talking about here. Okay, hopefully we are I'm going to have to go soon because I do hear my family up and about. I want to try to get through the super chats. So right now I'm going to cut it off at the super chats that have been submitted by now. Nasir, thank you so much for another question. Why is Ezekiel derived from Ishum and Era, along with so many of the Semitic roots used in the earlier story? Do the heavens roll up like the roll of a book that Ezekiel ate from the Hamsa of God? I'm I'm not sure what the Ishum and Era traditions have to do here with Ezekiel. Yeah, this is something that I'm not able to gain any purchase on what the precise question is here. Jessica, any thoughts here?
He's specified the poem of Era,
Yeah.
but I'm not super familiar with it either, unfortunately.
Well, Ezekiel is in Babylon at this time, so there's a lot of ways that the literature there, the traditions are going to influence the way his imagery takes shape. Sometimes it's borrowing, sometimes it's responding to negatively.
I mean, if you like,
I don't know what you mean by.
Sorry.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I know there's scholarship. I've read some of it. I just can't remember right now who wrote it, but about the way in which, like, the structure of certain parts of Ezekiel mirrors, like, Gilgamesh, and I believe maybe the Enuma Elish at points. But I'd have to go back and look at what it was because it was a while ago.
Yeah, and I think we just have the author here is trying to paint a worldview that is influenced by where they're located and is also engaging with. And so there's going to be influence that's positive. There's going to be influence that's negative. Hang on just a second. I'm finishing up. I'll be out in a second. My wife needs a hug. So now she's got her hands up. Now she's got her hands on her hips outside of the glass door.
Listen, go give her a hug. I can handle it for a second.
Okay, I got just a second. Talk amongst yourselves. I'll give you a topic. Arabic translated memes. Thank you so much. Ex-Muslim academic here. Well, thank you for being here. I enjoy your videos and find parallels in many of the topics you discuss. I specifically find many issues around Jesus and how it is detected in Islam. Keep up the great work. Well, thank you so much for the kind words. I think there are... it is very interesting the way some of the early Christian traditions, particularly as related to like Docetism and things like that, as they're represented in some of the Gnostic literature, bubbles to the surface in some Islamic traditions. But give me a moment. I'll be back.
Okay. Time to plot the overthrow. Just kidding. No, I hardly doubt. All right, I doubt that Dan's wife is concerned with him live streaming with me. We've done a number of live streams together, actually. Dan actually wrote one of my letters of recommendation because he's a nice guy. Oh yeah, I want to see the dog too. I miss my dogs. What is the wildest thing I've heard in my professor's class? The thing is like, I mean, I guess it depends on what you mean by wild. Because my professors are all very, very smart and very like researched, and most people aren't brave enough to like really fight them on any of their points, especially because the one I'm thinking of in particular will just be like, no. Love him. Talking about Dr. Chevelle and how he suffers no fools.
Yeah, that is not. All right, Nathan Patterson, thank you so much for the question. More in your wheelhouse. Oh, wonderful. I love Samuel being called by God. Skip the corrupt priest altogether. Unresolved issues with my clergy ancestors. Okay. Any highlights you like from this text? Possibly data over dogma sode. Samuel being called by God. So this is at the very beginning. We have Samuel in the temple is called by God. In my book, I talk more about Saul being called and Samuel's mediation of that call and some fascinating stuff in there. But yeah, that would be an interesting one of the segments we have on the Data Over Dogma podcast is what we call the chapter and verse, where we just kind of read through a short passage and just talk about what we've noticed and traditions and scholarship and things like that. But that would be a good one. In fact, I shall write that down. On to the next page here.
They did not worship the fish god.
Oh, fish god stuff?
There's this one the live one in chat that's like just spouting a bunch of nonsense. Love to see it.
Oh, and the idea that the Pope's hat is representative of the fish god. That's a great one. Yeah, there was
Hold on,
no
let me get my
fish
tin foil.
god.
I'm ready.
Dagon had nothing to do with fish. Okay, Bora HCN, thank you for another question. Does the Akkadian Elu refute L originated as a proper name arguments? And are there any platforms for Mesopotamian like r/academic biblical? So L originated as a proper name. I don't think that's I don't think that's an argument I've seen, and I don't think many people would accept that. I think El has always been a fundamental noun that just means deity. And so just like Baal is a noun that became the name of a deity, El is a noun that became the name of a deity, and it just means deity. And so in terms of proper name, I don't think that works. But I think the fact that Akkadian Elu is etymologically related supports the notion that this is just a generic noun that means deity that became the proper name of the high deity. And Marvin Pope's argument on El in the Ugaritic text from 1955, I think I've always held up as the best we can do, where he says the etymological problem is I don't remember what the exact word he used was, but it was like unsolvable based on the available data. The best we can say is it's a noun that means deity, and it can't be any further parsed apart from that.
Yeah.
So I think what that refutes is the notion that it is related etymologically to like a root that means to be strong, or the word for an ox or something like that. I think those etymologies that we would find in like Strong's and BDB and elsewhere, I think those can get thrown out the window.
Yeah. The only thing I really think is interesting is that Elu, which is I think what he was referencing here, is actually the plural. It's the plural masculine of the singular stem, but it might be interesting in relation to if there's or it's interesting to think about if there's any relation then to the Elohim plural. But I don't know that. I don't know. It's just a thought I had.
That would be a reassessment of biblical Elohim by Joel Burnett from 2001. I think that's the best discussion there is on the etymology of Elohim. Okay. And he calls it he says it's plural because it's a concretized abstract plural, but there's a whole discussion there. But thank you for a great question. And his Zatness, thank you so much for the question. Are you an Orson Scott Card fan? Not particularly. I know of Orson Scott Card. I know of folks who are fans of Orson Scott Card. Myself, not a fan. And part of that is because Orson Scott Card is a famous LDS fantasy writer. So he's, and I did not grow up when I was reading fantasy. I was not LDS and couldn't have cared less. So
I have no idea who that is. So thank you for.
He wrote Ender's Game, which was a pretty yeah. So a lot of people.
I haven't read that book, but I'm familiar with the title.
Yeah, I'll tell you who is an Orson Scott Card fan though is Marty Abegg.
I don't know who that is.
Marty Abegg, big Dead Sea Scrolls scholar.
Okay.
So he and Peter Flint have done a lot of translations of the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Nice.
Bora HCN, thank you so much. This is the final super chat question that I'm going to answer. I'm going to look over. Okay, I do have some questions in the Discord to get to that I haven't. Again, as is my vice, I have neglected them. Are there also are the papers on Tel Al Hammam valid? 100% no. They are entirely invalid, and they have been widely criticized by scholars across a number of relevant disciplines. And in fact, if I recall, the paper was retracted, wasn't it, by the journal that originally published it? I'm pretty sure it was either retracted or they have like put it on hold and are investigating in order to potentially retract it. But yeah, the airburst, the Tunguska event thing, yeah, that's all nonsensical. All right, we've got, and somebody points out that when I did the woo, and it reminded me of a song, KT Tunstall's "Black Horse in the Cherry Tree."
Yes, it's a good song.
I think so. Archival Blob says, by the way, McClellan, I was wondering about the inscription Adonai and his Asherah. My understanding is that it has the 3ms pronominal suffix on Asherah. Summer brings up that putting these suffixes on personal names is unattested in Semitic languages. How does that affect the interpretation of your opinion? I talk about this in my book. I talk about it further in the trade book that I have coming out April 15th. The Bible says so. When pre-orders are available, I'm going to be insufferable. So
I want it now.
I'll send you a PDF.
Please.
Yeah, it's
and then I can also be insufferable on your behalf.
It's not typeset, the PDF I have. I'm expecting to get the typeset proofs within the next week or two.
Just either one is fine, honestly.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Okay. Anyway, so there are a couple things to note here. This could be the third masculine singular pronominal suffix, his Asherah. Richard Hess argues that Asherata is actually the norm for the appearance of the name Asherah in inscriptional Semitic languages. In other words, it's the regular form that we would expect rather than something with a third masculine singular pronominal suffix. I don't think that argument has completely displaced the concern, the notion that it is a third masculine singular pronominal suffix. However, I think in light of the Kuntilat Ajrud inscription, which centers the blessing by Adonai and by his Asherah over the headdress of the male deity and a male-female pair of deities, I think that makes pretty clear that whoever wrote that understood the female deity to be representative of Asherah. And so if it is not directly referring to the goddess, it is using a female deity iconographically to represent his Asherah, which means they may if it is to be understood as a cultic object, it is represented iconographically as a female deity. So it's still referring, if indirectly, to Asherah. But we also have some evidence, and I think it is with the deity Reshef. I'll have to look it up again, but there's an article. I don't remember exactly what the article is, but within the last 10 years, or maybe 15 years, there's been an article published that argues you do sometimes find pronominal suffixes attached to divine names. If I'm recalling. I may not be recalling correctly, though. I'll have to check that out. So my argument would be that it could be referring directly to the goddess. It could be referring to the goddess via her cultic object. It could just be referencing the cultic object. If so, it's indirectly referencing the goddess, and at least in reference to the Kuntilat Ajrud inscription and drawing, very clearly there is a female goddess linked with the inscription. So, and then there's an article by a friend of mine, Thomas, that it is. Let me pull it up so I can remember the title exactly. It is okay. Ryan Thomas from 2016 issue of Journal of Ancient Near Eastern Religions: The Identity of the Standing Figures on Pithos A from Kuntilat Ajrud, a reassessment. I think makes a very comprehensive argument that that is definitely Asherah as a female goddess there. But great question. And then the final Discord question: Hey, Heathen Queen. When you find the research comparing Ezekiel to the Enuma Elish, could you post it here, please?
Yeah, and I might be wrong about the Enuma Elish, but definitely Gilgamesh. But yeah, but I'll go back and look at it. And who asked that? Do you mind?
That was TWE on our Discord.
Yeah. I'll try and remember to tag, but yeah, definitely.
Awesome. All right. I'm just going back to the chat, which I have also been neglecting.
I'm texting myself so I remember these things.
Is it true Sumerian is completely isolated from all other languages? How did we translate it then? Yeah, it's a language isolate, although it influenced Akkadian, but it is a different language from Akkadian and is an isolate. How do we translate it then? We used other
Carefully.
What's that?
I said carefully. No.
I assume from bilingual inscriptions and things like that. That tends to be how we learn how languages work. That's how we learned how Egyptian worked. Hand of Omega asked, Dan, what is the thumbnail for your live streams from? That's a picture I took of the Acropolis from the top of Mount Philopappou, which this is every time I'm in Athens, I make sure there's a run I do early in the morning. I used to do it right as the sun was coming up, as you see in that picture that I took. But this is 100% true. I stumbled across too many sex workers plying their wares in the bushes. I am not.
I'm just trying to go for a run, buddy.
Yeah, there on 2 different occasions. I like rounded a corner because that like the Acropolis and Philopappou are like they're kind of like Central Park. It's like nobody lives there. It's just trees and bushes and stuff like that. And so if you're wanting to get away from the people and you can't be indoors, that's the only place you're going to find semi-privacy. Okay. And so, like early in the morning, I'm rounding a, oh shoot, sorry, I left that comment up there. I'm very bad at this. But I like rounded a corner and was like, ah! And scared some folks. But one of the things I do is I run around the Acropolis a bunch of times. I run up Philopappou to the very top, and if I can, I try to catch the sunrise over the mountains and over the Acropolis from Philopappou. And I took that picture one time, and I just thought it was really nice. So I just use that for all the thumbnails because it's convenient.
Yeah. Dan, you need mods.
I'm awful at this. I don't even know how to do that.
I can tell you if you are interested. I can tell you off chat like how to do it. If you're not, don't worry about it. But yeah.
But my live streams are kind of ad hoc. Like if I find myself with some free time, I'll just be like, "Ooh, I'll do a live stream." So I think it would be a little difficult to get somebody to jump on whenever I happen to jump on.
Hey, works for me.
Yeah.
But Donna, you got to go, buddy.
Yeah, I got to go. I got some attention I've got to give to some family members. Hopefully my daughters, both my daughters had a rough night last night. They're trying to get over COVID. So
that's tough.
They brought COVID back from Dragon Con. I did not. I have repeatedly tested negative, but my daughters brought COVID back.
Kids these days, no.
Yeah. It's probably the airplanes.
Yeah.
Well,
thanks for letting me pop in. This was very fun and a nice break from my normal just writing and studying. So
I'm glad to hear that. Even though you are in a university library right now, I hope it helps you get away a little bit.
It's nice to talk about things that are in the same general range, but not like banging my head into a wall trying to think about the same thing over and over.
Yeah, I think that's as much as I enjoyed graduate school, there is that part of it where it's just like you're trying to solve a puzzle that just refuses to be solved in a lot of ways, and it can be frustrating. But you will, as weird as it may feel right now, you will look back with fondness.
It's a weird thing that it sucks in a lot of ways, but I also am really enjoying it. And I'm glad I get to do it. It's one of those things when you do research and you're trying to have an original thought. You got to bang your head for a while.
Those of you who are interested in, any of you who might be interested in doing biblical scholarship, this is something that everyone who goes into this field has to deal with. At one point, you realize this is something that's been studied pretty much longer than anything has ever been studied. And so there are more than 2,000 years of people talking about this. And you, at one point, you kind of have to grapple with the hubris of thinking you have anything new to say.
Well, that was like the
you
crisis.
can prove everybody else was wrong, and you have come along to finally get it right. That's
I again, poor Dr. Stacker, because I'll sit in there and be like, I'm never gonna say anything. How can I say anything? But yeah, I mean, I've started to realize that it's less about saying that everybody else was wrong and just trying to add, like, 1/16 of an inch of dimension to some argument and hope for the best.
Yeah, and there's plenty of new theoretical frameworks that we're bringing things like that. Was one of the reasons I really love stumbling upon the cognitive science of religion, because it was like, oh, this is a field of research that's younger than me, and so this might, and no one has ever. There are a couple of books out there that have applied a part of it to a part of the Bible. It's like I got all kinds of stuff where there are questions that have never been ever considered, applying this to this question and that. So there are always going to be new things that people can look at and ways to contribute. But
Dr. Josh says it's the guy who presents as a scholar and an atheist studying at some no-name university. So true.
Yeah, that's me, as everybody knows.
Famously an atheist.
Yeah. Well, I got tagged in some video that's by a creator who somebody was like, Dan's a Mormon. Or no, the creator was like mocking me about something, and somebody's like, he's also a Mormon, and his response was, he's an atheist masquerading as a Mormon. And I was like, that's, oh man, the many different ways that people have tried to encapsulate me, to try to.
That just seems like so much more trouble than it's worth. Like, it would be easier for you if you were not a Mormon and just a scholar, because, like, at least it seems it would be easier, because when I say something, I'm not even a scholar yet, but if I say something, they can't say like, oh, well, you're a Catholic. That's why you think that.
Because I get it from both sides. Because like, I'm like, I just want to do scholarship, but every time I say something, I've got the Mormons on one end going, you're not a good Mormon, and then I've got the evangelicals on the other side, you're not a good Christian because you're a Mormon. And nobody wants to understand. Everybody just wants to make themselves feel more comfortable in the little boxes that they've put themselves into. So all right, well, enough quejando. I'm gonna go. Thank you everybody for your time. Thank you so much, Jess, for reaching out and saying, hey, we should do a live again.
This was so fun. And thank you as always for all the books. Yeah, I mean, technically I'm always available because I'm always just in the library, but
I know that feeling. Although when I remember at Oxford, there was I loved being in the Bodleian Library. When I had my little active ID card, it's like, I can get into these places that nobody else can get into. The Duke Humphreys reading room and the Bodleian and all this kind of stuff. And I remember one time I was just sitting there reading, and I had headphones on, and I forget what I was listening to, but somebody from the other side of the room, and large reading room, got up, walked around over to me, tapped me on the shoulder and said, could you turn your music down? And I was absolutely horrified. I was evidently blasting it so loud that the entire reading room could hear my music.
That's funny.
And I think it was Shakira Lavanderia or something like that. So,
that's amazing.
I was like, I'm doing you a favor. But
have some culture.
I was so horrified that I was just blasting my music, this ugly American in this Bodleian reading room. But after that, I was always very demure, very mindful about my presence in those libraries. And
that's funny. Oh man,
there would have been no option of hopping on a live stream with somebody. So
well, I'm in the Regenstein, so we have like all of these like study rooms. If I was in the I forget what it's called, the Harper Memorial is the one that looks like Harry Potter, and there's no you're quiet. That's it.
Yeah, the Duke Humphreys reading room. That's where they filmed the Harry Potter library scenes.
Amazing.
And you're not even allowed to, you can't even bring a pen in there. It's like and there's a sign on the front. You're like not allowed to kindle any flame or anything like that.
Is someone lighting candles in there?
Well, it's just so old that they used to have to light candles in there, and that was against the rules. So
I see.
You only studied during the daytime. But I would go in there, and I had my laptop one time. I opened it up and I had to turn it on. I was like, boom, and I was.
Hey guys.
So I've made a lot of ugly American mistakes in Oxford, but
at least they make for good stories. All right.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, everybody. Appreciate your time. Appreciate your supports. And I hope you have people around you who love you. I hope you have a warm, safe place to spend the night, enough food on the table, and I will be back whenever the mood strikes me. And if you're not in my Discord, I have a Patreon. You can go on there. I do live streams that I actually schedule and let people know about beforehand. If you're in the Patreon and on the Discord, usually it's on the third to last day of the month. I'll say, oh, my live streams are on the next day and the last day of the month, because I forget about it. But I do mostly get 2 in every month. So, all right, time to go. Thank you, everybody. See you around. I hope, hope
Thanks,
your day goes well, Jessica. I hope next week is good. And are you coming to San Diego?
I'm gonna try. I have to figure out a way to have the money for it, but that's the goal.
Okay, well, I hope to see you there. We have never met in person, so
I know, that's wild.
Yeah.
All
right. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thanks.
And